Ready to? No, I think it's on. Hi, everybody. I am so excited to be here. This is my first business trip ever since the pandemic started. And all I can think as I was just seeing that there's actual humans in the room is we did it. we're on the other end of this thing after a year of basically just being locked up, going through Zoom for everything from meetings to instructions. I'm so excited just to be in another place to see new people than my own family. I'm here to talk about computer science, opportunity, and creativity in our schools, but I want to briefly start with my personal story. This is a picture of me growing up when I was younger, along with my identical twin brother. I'm the one on the left. And around the time when that picture was taken, we were living in the country of Iran. And so there was a revolution and war broke out with the neighboring country of Iraq. And I spent most of my childhood every evening in a basement holding my ears while we were getting bombed. It was a terrible place to grow up. It was a lot like the pandemic. But my life really changed one day when my parents brought home a magical gift. They brought home a Commodore 64 computer, but this wasn't the magical gift. The gift really was a book, an introduction to basic programming, and I used that to teach myself coding and computer science. So by the time I came to the United States as an Iranian immigrant, I was already quite good at computer science, and I basically have been living the American dream, enjoying the opportunity that comes from being great at learning not only how to use technology, but how to create technology. But the American dream and the story of opportunity in this country is changing. If you think about technology's impact on our workforce, we all know that if you think about today's jobs, they're gradually getting replaced by technology. And automation over the next 30 years is going to disrupt about half of all jobs in the country. But when we talk about computer science, people ask me, is this basically about teaching people coding so that they can get into coding jobs? And that's absolutely not what this is about. Computer science is about making school and education better regardless of what career a student wants to get into. It's about preparing students for this century. It's about making a break from the education that most of us as adults had when we went through school. Computer science prepares students better for life. When I went through school, every student would learn how the digestive system would work, or how electricity lights a light bulb, or how a squared plus b squared equals c squared. And we'd learn these things not only if you want to become a surgeon or an electrician or a mathematician, they're just fundamental to learning how the world works. And in this century, it's equally fundamental to learn how an algorithm works or how the internet works. These are things we use every day in our daily lives, but most Americans don't know how they work. And the way you learn about these things has to be in school. The other thing about computer science is it helps schools better prepare students for college and career. Now, when we started Code.org, this wasn't clear, but now there's 8 years worth of research that shows that students who study computer science as part of their K-12 experience, they outperform in reading, writing, math, and science exams as early as elementary school. They outperform in problem solving and executive functioning skills. By high school, computer science students perform better in high school math courses than their peers who don't study computer science. A student who takes computer science is 17% more likely to enroll in a four-year college. In university, they outperform in problem solving as well. And then lastly, they have higher wages after graduation. This has nothing to do with whether you get a job in tech or not. It just means you do better at education if you pair it with computer science. There's also a stereotype about computer science that research has now broken, which is that math is not necessary to learn computer science. In fact, language skills are 8 times more likely to predict a student's success at learning computer science and computer programming. Which means if you have a son or a daughter who loves languages, or who's bilingual, or who likes creative writing, they are fit to become a computer scientist. The other reason computer science is great to teach in schools, it is more fun for students, and that also makes it more fun for teachers. The slide says engaging, but the real word is fun. And the reason it's fun is because of the creativity. It's because as early as elementary school, you can write code to make beautiful art. By middle school, you can not only play games, but make your own games. By high school, you can make apps, and students get to actually exercise their creativity in a course that also teaches analytical skills. And when you think about creativity, today's students are busting with great ideas. There's so many ideas we've heard about that students have built on code.org. There's this young boy, Dowdy Manigat. He lives in Miami. His idea, and this is a little bit edgy, was to create an app to help domestic abuse victims, but it was a hidden app hidden inside a game so they could call for help without somebody else knowing that that's what they were doing. Or this is Sophie Saujani, a girl in Seattle who made an app during the early days of the pandemic to help people find restaurants that were still open or serving takeout food in March and April when things first shut down. Or Hannah Walden and her classmates who made an app to help their classmates self-diagnose their mental health. Or Spencer Applegate from rural Kentucky. He basically lives in a school where 16% of the students are homeless. The majority, 70 or 80% of the students are on free and reduced lunch plans, and he, with just 200 lines of code, recreated the Tetris game, which is a multi-billion-dollar gaming franchise. And he did it because his teacher challenged him and said, if you can create a great game, I'll take you out for breakfast. And he created this. America's students are so ready for technology opportunity, and because of the creativity of computer science, they now rank it their favorite subject behind only dance, music, and art because of the creativity. In the words of teachers, this teacher in 8th grade said, I decided to try code.org in my science class, and I have never, ever seen my students so engaged and excited about learning as I saw them today. Every one of us who are parents know that in the last year we watched our kids engage with classes and classrooms. It is hard to keep kids engaged in today's school. And part of that is because the curriculum of most schools was created in the 1800s. We're multiple centuries later still teaching the same things as the 1800s. And when we give kids computer science, they're like, oh, this is about now. This is about what I really need to learn for this century. But the problem is most schools don't teach computer science. It's not even an option. This isn't about encouraging the students. You can't encourage the students to study something that's not even offered in the school. What's worse, and this is really sad, is if you look at which schools offer computer science, the lower income neighborhoods are less likely to have computer science available on the menu. And considering that this is a field that fast tracks students to the best paying jobs in the world, but it's more available to wealthier neighborhoods, and that availability is also linked and correlated directly to race, this is just un-American. There is no reason why every school doesn't equally offer computer science so every student has an opportunity to learn. Now, this isn't just a problem, it's a problem that we know how to solve and we are solving. In the 8 years that code.org has existed, globally we've gotten 60 million students to set up accounts in our platform. We're also solving the diversity problem. Of the students on code.org, almost half are young women, half come from underrepresented racial or ethnic groups like Black, Latino, or Native Indigenous populations, and almost half are students who are too poor to afford their own lunch, but they're learning computer science in schools. And these students have now created over 150 million projects from what they're learning in their classrooms, whether it's apps, websites, games, etc. This is now part of a global movement that has started and led in the United States, but has spread globally. In the United States alone, all 50 states have now established some sort of policy to support K-12 computer science. In this state, Superintendent Baszler was talking about the policy to allow it to count for graduation or establishing standards for computer science and cybersecurity. There's been over $250 million in federal and state funding allocated to computer science, and over 100,000 new teachers across the country have been prepared in computer science. This has then led to a global movement. The US may not seem like a leader in all of education. We usually think like, oh, we don't get as good math scores or science scores as other countries, but we are the leader in computer science. We're the country that invented the computer, we invented the smartphone, we invented the internet, and we are leading the world in computer science education. Ever since our start here, over 50 countries have now announced computer science plans. Globally, 2 million teachers have begun introducing computer science in their classrooms. And this little movement that started out as a fun idea, the Hour of Code, has passed over 1 billion times students having done it, which is just an unbelievable thing in terms of the power of a movement and the power of teachers and schools to spread a good idea. This is really a movement that started from individual teachers like Juan Lozano, who lives in my neighborhood in Seattle, who decided to introduce the Hour of Code in his school. And then he said, why don't we get the entire school teaching computer science, which he did on his own, and then he spread it to his entire school district. And now entire states have come on board to the point that all 50 states have been pushing this movement forward, and 50 countries. It's a global movement that's been powered by the passion of teachers who realize that this is the future, and they want to bring this to their school and their students while the administrative upper people figure their stuff out. But still, most schools don't teach computer science, and we have a lot of work to do. I want to talk about the picture in North Dakota briefly, which has good news and bad news, and I'll present both. One piece of great news is the opportunity. There's 5 times more open jobs, currently open jobs, than we have annual computer science graduates in this state. And their average salary is close to $80,000. Now, only 75 of the 194 high schools in North Dakota even offer computer science, but that's doubled in the last 4 years, thanks in part to the effort and passion of Superintendent Baszler, and also thanks to our local partner, EduTech, who's been helping us train new teachers to begin teaching computer science in schools. We went from basically half to now 75. We should be able to double this again in the next 4 years and to get to every school teaching computer science. This is the saddest stat. AP Computer Science, the college level high school course, in the entire state last year, only 7 students who are Black, Latino, or Native Americans in the entire state studied AP Computer Science. This stage has got to be able to do better than that. Now, it's not like it was 7 students out of thousands. All the numbers in computer science are too low. Now, if you compare to other states, 20 other states already required that every high school must teach computer science. North Dakota isn't there yet. 20 other states have written a state plan for computer science. That's right now in progress in North Dakota, but it's not done. And 28 other states offer state funding for computer science. So the state is part of the funds basically helping schools teach computer science. That's also something that I think is hopefully going to happen this time around with North Dakota, but has not yet happened yet. This state is so well poised to be a leader in this field. It's first of all got one of the most tech-savvy governors in the country, probably the most tech-savvy governor in the country. It is the most connected state in the country, and you also have enough funding to support this stuff. It just needs the will of the state to make it happen. And this picture has improved, but we can do better. Now, computer science is at an inflection point. Coming out of the 2020 pandemic and the digital divide, there's a lot of things that people are trying to figure out what does the new normal look like, and a big part of that new normal is going to need to be computer science becoming a basic part of education. There's multiple things that this pandemic has changed in education that all set this up to be a reality. One is that 90% of students now have one-on-one devices. Almost every student in the country has a computer from their school, and it's climbed significantly since before the pandemic. This is, as we all saw during the pandemic, it was terrible that we didn't have computers for every kid to Zoom into classroom. Now all these kids have computers. What are we going to do with those things? The best thing we can do is help them learn not only how to use technology, but how to create it. The other change from the pandemic is all of our teachers, every teacher in the country learned how to use Zoom or Microsoft Teams and basically got a trial by fire, basically up-leveling of their tech skills. Whether they liked it or not, they had to do it. And now every teacher is slightly more tech savvy, slightly more comfortable with what was previously intimidating, and more ready to try new technologies. Now, that helps place us in a position to teach people that computer science isn't just about coding, it's about creativity and collaboration. Now, the third change that has happened from the pandemic is the workforce change. These are all logos of companies that, other than Microsoft, don't have an office in North Dakota. All of them have announced that they will hire computer scientists from anywhere, which means if you graduate with a computer science degree in a North Dakota university, you don't need to go to Silicon Valley to work for Google or for Twitter or for Facebook. You don't need to go to Australia to work for Atlassian. You don't need to go to Toronto to work for Shopify, Salesforce. All these companies will hire employees right here in this state at very high paying levels. There's so much more opportunity that could be tapped into. It only is up to the education system to prepare the students, and that's a major change. Now, although that's an opportunity, it's important for us to remember that computer science isn't just about tech jobs. It's a foundational, basic part of basic education. And this brings me to the fourth aspect of what's changed from the pandemic, which is all of the learning loss that has happened from schools and students that were left behind, and especially disparities that have grown and students that need help. Now, this is a major problem and we should all worry about it. What's important to think is that all of our students need help learning not just reading and writing, but to think of computer science not only as part of the basics, but also as something that can help those students catch up where they're behind. And I want to remind you that by teaching computer science in schools, students can outperform in reading, writing, math, and science. I showed this earlier. These are the subjects that we're worried about learning loss. If we want to then do the undoing of the learning loss and help kids jump ahead, let's use the one tool that has now been proven to help them learn at all the things that we're worried about the loss. This brings me to my last point, which is that in today's world, computer science is about solving global problems. Thanks to computer science, at a time of a global pandemic, we found the technology for drug discovery and personalized medicine. At a time when our democracy is suffering from a pandemic of misinformation, computer science holds the keys to identifying fake news or moderating dialogue. When I learned computer science, it was about calculating the Fibonacci sequence in math. And when Mark Zuckerberg learned computer science, it was about sharing information on the internet. We need to shift computer science class to be about curing diseases, cleaning oceans, aiming for gender and race equality, addressing clean energy, and helping with global poverty. These are the problems that the next generation is inheriting, and they're going to solve these problems using technology, but only if our schools give them the tools and the education and the skills to solve these problems. I want to close with my personal story. When I came to the United States, my family was quite poor. We weren't immigrants coming for work. We were immigrants coming to escape a war, and we had left everything behind. We didn't have much money. We didn't have a home to sleep in. I was learning a new culture and a new language. I didn't even know how to dress for my first day in school. So there was a lot of things that were not going my way. But the one thing that was really headed really in a good shape for me was my mastery of coding and computer science. And that has helped me excel far ahead of my peers and the other kids I went to school with. And if I think about all of today's kids, if there's one thing we can prepare today's kids, especially the underserved, the underprivileged kids that want a leg up, want a path forward, well, how can we prepare them? I can't think of a better way to prepare them for the future, for the 21st century, than to give every kid the opportunity to learn computer science in schools. And this is something that every state can do. This state, it is its moment, and it is well poised to do that if we get the leadership across businesses, K-12, higher education, and the government lined up to do that. I lastly want to close by thanking the over 2 million teachers who've begun teaching on code.org. The teachers in general are changing the face of computer science, not just in their schools, but in the entire technology industry. It has been this incredible movement to see 2 million teachers decide that even while the system is figuring itself out, they're going to begin teaching this new subject that they never even learned. Many of them were scared of technology themselves, but they decided my kids need it, so I'm going to bring it into my classroom. So these teachers are changing our world, and my hats are off to them. Thank you very much, and thank you for listening.
That was fantastic, Hadi. Thank you. We're going to have an opportunity. I've got the real pleasure now to ask Hadi a few questions, and then we're going to go to questions from the audience or online. But I just want to kick off with gratitude. I mean, thank you for being here in person. Thanks for sharing your incredible story of your life and all the things. And right now, you could be, you were a successful entrepreneur, serial entrepreneur multiple times. grew companies, sold companies, worked for top tech companies, but you've decided that this is the mission. This is what you want to do, and look at the lives you're changing of teachers, students around the world. It's really incredible, and I want to just say we're grateful to have you here in North Dakota, and I'm grateful for what you're doing for the two things. Because if you ever understand, there's two parts of this. There's the platform, code.org, where kids can go on, and then there's the movement. And Hadi's the guy that's doing both of these things. They've created this tech startup which is changing computer science education for the whole world, and he's out lobbying every governor in America, and we got to get going because we don't look that good in that list. We're not on the top, we're not number one. We're number one in connectivity, we're number one in a bunch of things, but some of those statistics about where we're doing, and Asa Hutchinson, the governor of Arkansas, is a friend of yours, and he is driving great things there. I know he's going to be putting out a challenge as head of the NGA, which he's going to be the National Governor's Chair in August, challenging. So I just want to foreshadow to everybody here that you're likely going to see North Dakota wanting to get going, because this is an area where we should also be leading in. But I think you gave some great examples. I mean, solving some of the world's biggest problems and changing the lives of students. But maybe just share a little bit more about the day you decided to come up with code.org and take on this audacious idea that you were going to somehow change computer science instruction for the planet for the better. I mean, you've got Archimedes' lever and you're like twisting on it hard, and you're a guy that's just changing the world. It's so cool you're here. Isn't it cool he's here? I mean, he's the guy. He's the man. So
thank you.
Anyway, but how did you, when you're sitting around with your brother and saying, let's go do this amazing thing, I mean, what was the spark?
That's a great question, and it's funny because most people envision a moment of a spark, and most entrepreneurs know, as you know yourself, that entrepreneurship is much more about just the grueling work, and there's usually not like a magical spark. It's much more hard work. The idea of computer science education I've been passionate about almost my entire life, because I started when I was really young, and the initial start of code.org, it didn't start out with this grand vision. The first code.org was just a hobby to make one video, and that's the video that's still on our homepage. I used all of my connections in tech to get a video that featured Bill Gates and Mark Zuckerberg and athletes and musicians and whatnot to talk about the importance of computer science. And that video was a fantastic success. It had over 10 million views, and more importantly, 20,000 teachers said, how could we help? But at the time, code.org wasn't all of this. It wasn't a vision to change all of education. It was just one video. The real inspiration for me came from the reaction of those teachers. Having 20,000 teachers say, how do we bring this to our schools? And that was my inspiration for, I need to start an organization that can support that. And then the spark came from this thinking of what is one thing that every one of these 20,000 teachers could do. Some of them were elementary school teachers, some of them were high school teachers, some of them were in faraway countries I'd never visited, some of them wanted a full course, some of them wanted something after school. And I was like, what is the product we can create that every teacher in every classroom can do? And the spark there was the idea behind the Hour of Code. And I remember very well the day I thought of that. And the reason it's a great idea is because you don't need to explain to anybody that technology is the future or that there's money in it. Everybody knows that. What people don't realize is that I can do it in my classroom. My 8-year-old girls and boys in my school can do this, and they will love it. You can't explain that. You need to feel it. And the idea for the Hour of Code was to say, let's have every student in every classroom just try 1 hour, and to use that as basically the inspiration for the teachers to then say, let's do more. And when I had that idea, that was a real unique spark. I called my mom and I was like, this is the best idea I will ever have in my entire life. I want you to write down the date. And I just literally started calling people, even my aunt and uncle. I was like, I just came up with the best idea I'll ever have. And the fact that it's now become 1 billion times that people have done it is just truly remarkable.
Well, it is fantastic, and I've had a chance to personally experience what a great idea it is, because I was in a gym in Kindred, North Dakota, and got overrun by hundreds of
little kids,
of elementary kids that were all celebrating the Hour of Code, and it was like one of the great days. But tell me, personally that being able to code can change lives. You had that sweet picture of you on first day of school there. I mean, how old were you? And did I hear you say you already knew how to code at that point in your life?
I did. I started when I was around 8 years old, so I got started young, but that sounds crazy, but today there's millions of kids starting at 8 years old, or even younger. In fact, when we first launched our first Hour of Code tutorial, we said it's for ages 6 to 60, and we started getting write-ins saying like, my kid is 5 years old, can he not do this? And we also had people saying like, I'm 67, am I too old for this? So we changed our age range to be 4 to 104, and then nobody complained anymore after that.
Well,
but it's really not too early to start.
At least so far, because we have some 105 and 107-year-olds in North Dakota that I've met, so we'll be.
Okay, well,
they may be calling
maybe we need to up the age range.
The stats that you have about engagement. Let's just start with gender. You and I both have worked in tech. We know that computer science programs around the country have traditionally been producing 80% males. We know that math majors, 80%. Your numbers, I think you said 47% that were female, 45% free and reduced lunch. What can all of us and everybody watching learn from your success in the engagement that you're having with audiences that traditionally haven't gone for math or computer science?
First thing I would say is this is a problem we can solve, and it's a problem that schools can solve. The reason things have been tipped is because people have been applying their own stereotypes for what does a coder look like, and then they've been encouraging kids depending on their gender or race based on what they see, instead of thinking that every kid can do this. And schools are the best place for encouraging that every kid can do something. When you look at third grade math class, every kid is learning it, and there's not like a gender divide in what happens there. The reason our numbers are so good is because we've leveraged the power of public education to get this in front of a large number of students. We still see a drop-off among young women as they get older, but as our youngest learners grow up, I think that drop-off is going to change. The other thing, by the way, I should point out, and this is sad, is black students are almost twice as likely to express an interest in learning computer science, but they're underrepresented because they're less likely to go to a school that even offers it. And that's just so sad to think this is a field that leads to some of the best paying jobs, and then a student who wants to learn it doesn't have the opportunity to learn that at their school. So to fix diversity, we need to start young, but we also need access to be equal in every school.
Well, and I think you showed that in North Dakota we got a ways to go. And I think that we all would agree that we can't settle for anything less than 100% of our schools teaching computer science. What do you guys think?
By the way, this really is your moment. I was going to say, did you see the logos I showed of all the tech companies that offer remote jobs? I think because of your connections in tech, you could call up those companies and say, we are going to create an education pipeline that will graduate. We'll just make it a requirement for every student. Will you bring the jobs here and match those up? And I think that specifically can create the motivation that it's not just the work we're doing on the education side, we're going to bring money into the state as well. And I think because of the connectivity that you've laid out, that also has a unique opportunity. Every home has gigabit internet. I mean, it just feels like just so ready to happen.
Well, and I think you're right, because I think, as you described, those companies are all letting people work from wherever they want to work, so it's no longer, we could eliminate the brain drain.
Yep.
And have people be staying here and working here and close to their families, et cetera. You're as familiar with anybody I know on how states are thinking about the legislation. You'd shared earlier, I mean, Arkansas has literally passed a law that says this year that computer science is required to graduate from high school. I think you said they're the first state to do that. We're wondering who the second state should be to do that. I've got an idea who that might be, but let's say you have that. But then the debate within the schools is, you said earlier that people that understood and were good at language were 8 times more likely than people at math. So is computer science and computer languages should be a language credit, a math credit, a science credit, or all the above?
We recommend making it a math or science, and the reason is because of the way certification works. If you said computer science is a foreign language, what would happen unless you changed a bunch of other stuff is then you would need a foreign language certification to teach it, which then means like the Spanish teacher would be the only person who's allowed to teach computer science. Plus you need the university. If you're applying for a university in another state, they'd be like, we don't accept that. So it would be hard to make it a foreign language. And so we recommend making it a satisfying math or science requirement. There's a lot of question of whether learning foreign languages is gonna be a requirement or needed or useful 20, 30 years from now. In 20 years, when today's kindergartners graduate, their AirPods will just translate speaking live. So you could go to any country and just talk and hear the other person's voice will come in Spanish and it goes into your ear in English. And I think instead of teaching people languages, we need to start teaching them cultures and thinking about how to be a global citizen in a world where you'll be able to freely communicate with anybody on the planet in your language.
Yeah, I don't think we're 20 years away from that with Google Translate getting a little better
every
year. So
it's less than 20 years, but there's
coming.
no question that today's kindergartners are going to be graduating in that world.
So you talked about the 20,000 teachers that helped you get motivated, that inspired you. Now you got this 2 million that have picked this up, and these were not computer science teachers before.
None of them were.
So then paint a picture for all the educators here about how this is going to happen in North Dakota. We've got veteran teachers that are great at educating, but they've never taught computer science. What's the path forward for them to say, I want to be one of those people that's helping teach computer science?
That's a wonderful question. First of all, we have the incredible fortune that just last month, 50,000 new teachers joined code.org. And it's crazy because the first 20,000, I had to get a video with Bill Gates and Mark Zuckerberg and blah, blah, blah to get 20,000 emails. Now just every month, 50,000 teachers join this movement. And the reason is they see that it's much easier than they thought. The hardest thing for teachers to get started is the intimidation of the unknown. Coding feels scary and hard. Once you look at it, you realize most of it is dragging and dropping. 7-year-olds can do it. And also in every classroom, there's invariably one kid who's already ahead of you. And there's an opportunity to make that kid the classroom leader, the co-teacher, giving that kid leadership skills. And if anybody has trouble, they're gonna, this kid is gonna help debug. So it's not as scary as people think. And then the magic happens when you see kids' eyes lighting up or high-fiving each other, which doesn't usually happen in math class or English class. You don't see kids standing up and doing a dance because they got the math problem right, but they do that in computer science class because there's just a more innate motivation. And when you see that motivation as a teacher, even after 1 hour of trying it, you're like, okay, I need to do this more often. You already know this is the future is technology, but then when you see the kids gravitating to it, you feel personally that you're holding them back if you're not offering it to them every day or at least every week. But I'd say for any teacher, we offer training to prepare you so you don't need to jump into curriculum without any help. Through our partnership with EduTech, there's workshops for teachers from elementary school to middle to high school, whether it's for just teaching a few hours in the early grades or a full college level AP course in high school. We'll provide the training and prep, and EduTech will provide the support to do the teaching. The code.org courses also flip the classroom. So, when I went to school, classroom was lecturing and the teacher was the expert and they were the lecturer. In the code.org classroom, we have videos with the founder of Instagram explaining how images are stored in ones and zeros and how an image filter works. The role of the teacher becomes more of a coach or a facilitator, and the students are learning alongside the teacher, and the teacher actually gets the chance to model being a learner and being a lifelong learner. We're all entering a time of lifelong learning. Nobody's going to be able to, the old world where you study until you're 21 and then you work, that's changed. Everybody's going to need to be learning and keeping up with new stuff every decade, and today's teachers can model that for tomorrow's teachers and tomorrow's workforce.
So really at code.org for teachers, using the old phrase, you've really made it easy for people to be the inspirational guide on the side. They don't have to be the sage on the stage.
Exactly.
To help kids get started with this.
Exactly.
So we know that parents sometimes worry about screen time, and they like, the last thing my kid needs, and particularly coming out of COVID where they may have been home and had challenge to manage screen time. Is this one more thing, or what do you say to parents?
First of all, I have 3 young kids. I'm very worried about screen time, especially during the last year, because I think every parent knows we basically, when you're working at home, you just give the computer to the kid, whether it's for school, whatnot. It's just like that's, there's no, you have a meeting, there's no other solution. So everybody's trying right now to figure out how do you limit that. As we enter the summer, can we do like a screen time lockdown, for a little while to get the kids off the addiction, frankly. I would say with computer science, there's two really important things. Not all screen time is bad. Screen time that is creative time, brain time is good. You would never take a paintbrush away from a kid who's addicted to painting. You wouldn't take a pen away from a kid who's addicted to writing. So if a kid gets really into coding or computer science, that is perfectly fine. It's things like playing video games or watching entertainment or things like that, or probably the worst of all, social media. Those are the things that we need to limit kids' time on. The other thing is that computer science isn't all screen time. In our curriculum, at least, half of it is completely unplugged. For example, we'll do an exercise in a classroom where kids learn how information on the internet is sent in little packets, and they do that by having little pieces of paper that they have to pass around to other students and model a packet switching network in the classroom. No screens, just little pieces of paper. Half of our curriculum teaches those concepts without a screen. When I studied in university, we didn't have laptops, it was all on a whiteboard. You can teach many of the concepts without a screen at all, and that's how our unplugged exercises work.
Fantastic. I'll take a look around here. I know that we have anybody out in the audience with a microphone or anybody that wants to answer a question. I guess I should have offered those in other ways. If you have a question, we'll get a microphone to you. Any questions from the audience? Any questions coming in from online?
There's some questions from online on the screen in front of us, I think.
But they maybe need to scroll up on those, if that's or maybe those are at the bottom.
Yeah. There's one that says, starting from the fall semesters, what should college graduates preparing themselves as future teachers take as a course to prepare teaching coding? So if you're a college graduate who wants to be a teacher, what I would suggest is taking at least one very basic introductory computer science class. An intro computer science class in college is more than enough to then be able to teach computer science through K through 12 as a teacher. And this is actually part of the solution we need. Future teachers need to get the training for, somebody I was meeting with earlier saying before the cow gets out of the barn, while they're training and learning to become a teacher, they should learn enough so they can pass it on to the next generation. And so if anybody today is going through a school of education, taking one computer science class as part of your college education is a great background.
Fantastic. As we wrap up our time, Hadi, I guess I would ask you to, today has been a day of challenges for all the people that are here and those that are watching online. If you want someone to take action relative to code.org, for school administrators, for teachers, there's also folks here, of course, that are parents. What's the challenge that you would put out to each of them and to North Dakota going forward?
So there's a URL, I'd say code.org/yourschool. Code.org/yourschool, it has a couple things. Whether you're a teacher or a parent or administrator, it has resources for how you can participate, how you can help advocate as a parent, or how you can make change happen as an administrator. It also has a map where you can look up your school and see what does my school do from a computer science standpoint. We spent the time to build a database of every high school in the country to give some status on, does it offer computer science, does it kind of do it or not at all? And you can look up and see the status of your school. So code.org your school has the best follow on whether you're a parent, teacher, or administrator.
Fantastic. Well, let's close with gratitude because we're grateful that you decided to found code.org. We're grateful that you took the time to be here in North Dakota. We're grateful for your success. We're grateful for the lives that you're changing, and we're grateful for the inspiration and the challenge you left everybody today. But let's give it up. A great big North Dakota thank you. Hadi, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. This is wonderful.
Great.